Oh man, it has an automatic transmission. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. This story, I'd like to review some of the funny and semi-tragic things that happened to me in the context of my interaction with cars. What does every 16-year-old boy want in the United States? Well, lots of things for sure, but high on the list is a car. That was certainly my case when I was 16, and yet I viewed it as fairly unrealistic. I was 16, I had a brand new driver's license, I had no job, I had no money of my own, and I couldn't make a business case that I really needed a car. So I didn't say anything about it. However, my parents analyzed the situation from a different point of view, and that is they had 4 kids in 2 different schools, and so the logistics of picking kids up from school, it was getting to be a bit of a problem. So they decided to buy a car for the family, not for me. They made that very clear. This wasn't a gift for me. It wasn't my car. It was a car owned by the family, paid for by the family, maintained by the family, and to be used as a resource for the family. I accepted that. There was some discussion about what kind of car to get, but I really wasn't in on those discussions. I had my opinions. I wanted something really sporty. I wanted something really fun. They actually chose pretty well on that scale because they bought a Ford Mustang. In that era, they were inexpensive, simple cars, and they made a purchase. When they brought it home, they said, "Here's our new car." I was thrilled. It was a Mustang. Wow. And it had a V8 engine. Wow, this is great. So, what could be wrong with that? It had an automatic transmission. So in that era, for sure, any self-respecting 16-year-old boy is going to want 4 on the floor. You want to be able to shift and use a clutch. You wanted to be able to express yourself in this mode of transportation, not just get from point A to point B. No, it's about self-expression, and how could you do it any better than a gigantic V8 engine and 4 on the floor? Well, they got a pretty good-sized V8 engine, but they chose an automatic. Now, analyzing that through the lens of much more experience, looking back, they made a very good decision. At the time, I thought it was dreadful. I drove that car for years and transported myself and siblings around in it. I wrecked it once because I wasn't paying attention in traffic and a truck stopped right in front of me, but I was looking in a different direction, so I rear-ended that truck and took some grief from the parents for not shepherding the family resource any better than I had. Of course, they were right. The car was repaired, no one was injured. Really, it was all good news except for the embarrassment and the expense. When it came time for me to buy my own car, I had some money in the bank because I'd been working construction as a college student. I didn't have very much. When it came time to select a car that I would buy with my own money, my mom enlisted the help of her car guy, that is the repairman at a shop in town who had done maintenance on the family cars for a number of years. She felt she could trust him. He offered a small station wagon for $700, and she made the deal, actually. She spent my money on my car and told me what I had bought. I'm not sure I had any voice in that. Now, a college student is not going to be very anxious in driving a station wagon, but by that age, I had developed a little bit of a practical sense, and it did make sense to be able to carry things back and forth to college. So I didn't fight the idea that I was now the proud owner of an old station wagon. Unfortunately, that engine in that car failed catastrophically within a month or so. So it was towed back to the shop where we had gotten it, and they went over it and quickly discerned that the engine could not possibly be repaired. That car went to the junkyard. In order to make the deal good, since that car had failed so quickly and so completely, the owner of the shop accepted full credit for the purchase price toward the purchase of a different car. He had a 1968 Ford Falcon ready to go, but it was $500 more. I didn't have $500. But my parents added that much to the deal, allowing me to purchase this car. I was thrilled with the Falcon because it was much more like what I wanted. It's a very simple car, and it was bright red. I drove that car for several years. There really was no flaw in it. It worked until it got old enough that it was costing more in repairs than could be justified, so I traded it for a car later. It also had an automatic transmission. The first car I bought with my own money, on credit of course, was when I was in graduate school, and I bought a Toyota Corolla with a 5-speed. I got to finally get a standard transmission. We drove that car for years. It served us well. So far, I've been dealing with cars as transportation only. They didn't represent a hobby. That changed when we were living in the Washington, D.C. area, and on a Saturday, I went to an auto auction being held by the local government, and they were auctioning off abandoned cars and cars that had been seized. They were just emptying this large car impound lot. So I showed up at the beginning of this auction and looked at all the cars and decided that I would like a Volkswagen Beetle. There were 3 or 4 of them there, and so I knew how much money I could spend, so I bid on a Volkswagen, and it quickly got bid up into the stratosphere and out of my price range. So I lost that one. The next one that came up for auction had a lot of rust, and I didn't want it. The third one was blue. The body was in pretty good shape, so I started bidding on that. The bidding went up to $45, and I was the high bid, and it went no higher. Now, I was very puzzled. I won the auction, paid the money. I knew the car didn't run, but I figured I would get it running. They're simple cars. It would be cool. It's the whole point of this. It's a hobby car. So I paid for the car, and as planned, I towed it with the help of a friend back to where I was living. Now this is where we start uncovering the impractical nature of what I was doing, because I was living in an apartment complex, not a house. So I didn't really have a place to work on a car, particularly one that didn't run. But unencumbered by that thought process, I had bought a car for $45. Such a deal. When I had time, I went over that car and all the parts were there. So I charged up the battery and I couldn't get it to turn over. So I continued to investigate what was going on and eventually decided to pull the engine out, because one of my suspicions was that the engine was seized. I suspected that the engine had failed mechanically in its internal parts and was not capable of rotating any longer. Well, indeed, that was the case. That engine had seized, and when I opened up the case and examined the bearings, I could see that the main bearings were burned out. One in particular was just destroyed. The case was destroyed. The internal workings of the engine were beyond repair, so I would need a new engine for that VW. I was working full time. I didn't have a lot of extra money, so I did nothing for a while. And then eventually I sold that car to a friend of mine who had a teenage boy who wanted a car to work on. So I sold it to him for $45. In subsequent years, I had 2 other Volkswagen Beetles, but I had learned to buy them in better condition. And by then I knew more about how to work on them, how to do the repairs. And so I didn't have any more tragic experiences with Volkswagens. When I was living in Cleveland, having a Volkswagen was very adaptive because it was inexpensive, and no matter how cold it got in Cleveland, that car always started. All you had to do was turn the key and it would start every time. Other people had trouble getting their car started, not me. Years later, I bought a Triumph Spitfire, an older one. And by that time, I was, again, single. And I wanted a fun car. So I bought a Spitfire. And it was running in good shape. So I suggested to the girlfriend that we go for a ride in the country with the top down. We were standing next to the car, which was parked at the curb in front of her apartment. I was ready to go for a drive in the country. She said it would muss her hair up. Well, that might be true, but I think that's why we have ponytails, right? So she affixed her hair into a ponytail, and off we went, driving my new, that is old, Triumph Spitfire. We had a lovely time. It was very pleasant. And we came back at the end of our ride and discovered something unfortunate. This car had been equipped with shoulder harnesses, which is a good thing for safety. And she had been wearing her seatbelt and shoulder harness. That's good. But what I didn't know is that the shoulder harness on the passenger side had a great deal of grease and grime on it. So when she took her seatbelt and shoulder harness off, she had a stripe of grease and grime diagonally from her shoulder across her entire chest. She was not happy about that. I drove that Spitfire for several years. In fact, I drove it to Los Angeles. It made it cross country. It did give me a very funny experience because in New Mexico on the freeway, one of the welds of the exhaust system broke and the exhaust pipe fell into the roadway as I was driving at highway speed. This made the car incredibly noisy, and I was unprepared for this, so I quickly pulled over to inspect to see what had happened. It sounded horrible. When I looked under the car, I could see that the main exhaust pipe had fallen into the street because of a broken weld. I didn't have a lot of tools with me, and it looked like it needed to be welded. I certainly couldn't do that, so I needed to get to a town. So I walked along the interstate, along the edge of the interstate, looking for something that had fallen off a truck or been thrown out a window, something that I could use to pull this exhaust pipe out of the street so that I could drive to the next town, which was Tucumcari, New Mexico. I found a very large belt, very broad with a big buckle, and I took it back and slipped the buckle over the exhaust pipe and pulled on the belt and was able to hoist the exhaust pipe off the street. On the side of the engine compartment, there were several studs sticking up, metal fittings that were just sitting there with no obvious reason they were there. And I pulled the belt over, pulled it up tight, and then pushed the stud through the belt. Problem solved. I started the car. It sounded terrible because the open exhaust pipe was just sounding like a World War II fighter plane, maybe a Spitfire. So I drove to Tucumcari, New Mexico, and pulled into an auto repair shop. The guy took a look at it, and he assured me that he didn't have any metric tools and that I should go on down the road. Now at this point I was puzzled because there's nothing metric about welding. And the other thing is, this is a British car. They're not metric, they're standard. But he didn't know that, and since he didn't know either of those things, I figured his advice was probably solid, and that is, go further down the road. I drove into Albuquerque, and I stopped at a Texaco station to get some gas and get some advice. So I asked the fellow at the station where I should take my car. I need the exhaust system welded back together. He said, let me take a look at it. I showed him. He said, give me 15 minutes, I got you covered. That's easy. Within 30 minutes, I was back on the road, and he didn't even charge very much. It was totally affordable. I drove that car in Los Angeles and eventually traded it for another unreliable British car. So that's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite comments below, and I hope you join us in future videos. See you soon.